If you thought we drove fast on our way out of the city, I was having a blast on my new ride. The two-wheel steed of steel was leaving a red haze in the light of the rising sun. I had claimed one of the VX Hellions for myself. They were very nice bikes, and after seeing Reva's set of wheels, I had been pining for my own again. It had been a long night. Shaz and his team had had just enough parts to give my legs function again. It wasn't the full high-tech kit I was used to, but I could walk, run and jump. So it was better than nothing. But why was I in such a hurry? What had me fuming? What news had pissed me off enough to just leave the site without a decent meal or even any iced coffee? Let me take you back to the night before. Pick up, I muttered under my breath as I tried to get Fia on the comm. It wasn't like her not to answer on the first ring. It's not like she slept much anyway. I called a second time, and it continued on. It felt like an endless ringtone. What are you doing? I was being moved into the medbay to have my legs repaired. Well, as best as they could manage with what limited tech they had. Reva and Hercule were helping the cleanup and salvage. I could hear Hercule outside bemoaning the damage to the hire car he had rented. The poor little hatchback was so full of holes you could have used it as a colander. At last, the lull in sound as a ringtone dropped off and a connection was made. Fia? The video connection loaded, slightly fuzzy. She was wearing an oversized shirt covering most of her body, her hair was in a mess, and she looked exhausted. Par for the course. Her features had that drawn look that came from her struggling to keep control. It must have been a rough night. Oh, you must be fucking psychic, she yawned. I paused as I was lifted off the harvest drone that had been my makeshift transport and onto an operating table. Yeah, why's that? I'm rendering a profile for our dead Cypher friend. That caught me off guard. I put my own revelation to one side for a minute. What are you talking about? She rubbed her eyes. You know how we gathered all that footage from the Navy base and you recorded a bunch of interactions with the guy? Yeah. Well, I've been working on a program that's analyzing all the images, every layer, every kink and curve we caught, trying to reconstruct the image of his face. Why didn't you mention this before? I wasn't sure it was going to work. I didn't want to get your hopes up. We just had the smallest fragments, but some of the images that the Navy boys had are actually in pretty good condition. After a bit of cleaning up, they got some seriously powerful surveillance tech over there. You'd want to hope so. So how much longer until you have an image for me? Hopefully in a few hours? I'm having to do a lot of scrubbing and sifting manually. Wait a sec. I paused as I shut down my mental and cybernetic links between my legs and the rest of my body, as the nurse and doc got comfortable either side of the operating table. Sorry. Okay, while we wait for that, I have a fun little fact to share. All these goods that have been jacked from this little town, guess who the recipient is? There was a pregnant pause as fear narrowed her eyes. Why do I get the feeling I'm not going to like the answer? Our favourite little goblin gangster. Fear brought her fist down hard on the shallow bench she used as a desk while sitting on the floor. That sneaky little green fuck. Yeah, it's so obvious I can't believe I didn't see it already. We saw all the loot last time we were in the warehouse. You think he orchestrated the whole thing? I shook my head. Not him. He likes to open the door to opportunity, but there are easier ways for him to get his goods than hiring the Harlequins to come and raid remote towns. Seriously? The raiders were Harlequins? Oh, sis, have I got some... The sound of a surgical grinder cut off the last half of my sentence. What's going on? Where are you? I had forgotten to link up my visuals from my end. Well, not really. I'd forgotten for good reason. Oh yeah, about that. My legs got cooked. Another high-pitched whine, the sound of metal being cut into. Ulf, what the fuck? So, jump forward to the next morning and a few hundred Ks of blacktop. I was waiting the call from Fia to give me the news I had hoped against hope would include the identification of the stranger. In the meantime, I was keeping myself distracted. I was seriously impressed by the Hellion's performance. It really was a top-of-the-line machine, and kitted out with some very sweet augments, albeit empty of any ammunition. I knew if I opened her up, I could reach a radical top speed of 350 k's. But who wanted to be that crazy? Reva and Hercule were growing more and more distance as they trailed behind me in our shitbox of a car. As I said, the rental car Hercule had driven up in was toast. Besides, I was in a hurry, and either way, I wasn't leaving a perfectly good bike behind. Someone had to ride it back. I passed road trains, buses, and cars, swerved around roos and one stray sheep. I was almost having fun, if not for the conversation that was waiting at the end of the ride. I had been playing over different permutations of how I thought it was going to go in my head, knowing all too well that it wouldn't be like any of them. To take my mind off things, I scrolled through a few different newscasts. The big news these days was a combination of the rebuild of the city with Sierra's climb up the political ladder. She had gone from angling from taking a guiding hand in the city to setting her sights on governor of the state. That might sound like a very fast track, but the weight the corporations pulled allowed for progress at that speed. Enough money could turn the political ladder into a private elevator. The country had essentially become a pay-to-win privatized government when no one was looking over the last 200 years. They didn't even bother hiding it anymore. At this rate, she was going to take control of the whole state in a matter of weeks. My comm rang. I answered on the first chime. I didn't even give it a chance to finish. Please tell me you have a nice HD clear-cut image for me. There was a gap where her confirmation should have been. Fia? So I do have an image, but it's rougher than I would have liked. You're not going to get everything right first time, I said reassuringly. Look, I just feel like maybe if we go over some of the city's cams... Fia. Okay, fine. Coming at you. There was the striking of keys in the background, and one of the longest seconds of my life, as the image flew across hundreds of kilometers of empty air. Ding! I pulled up the image on my HUD. There's something about that face that has me swearing I've seen it before. It's just so broken up. I wasn't listening to her. Not really. It was a ghostly image, not a full clear face, but portions of it, in pale blue 3D rendering. It pivoted slowly so I could catch every bit from every angle. It was maybe 40 or 50% complete, but it was enough. I had seen it before. I've been so fucking stupid. What? Fuck! What? Who is he? I don't know who he is, but I know who he's been. The first time I had seen him, I nearly spilled my drink over his flash black suit at the fight up in Eden. The last time, he had been the doorman at the party where he had perished. But the clincher... Remember those photos of the community work Sierra was doing? You showed them to me the night of the party. A hesitant reply. Yeah. Pull them up. The roar of the bike's motor was the only sound as Fia sifted through documents. I knew she had found it when she spoke next. Holy shit. It's him, isn't it? It wasn't really a question. I knew I was right. You've got to be kidding me. I can't believe I didn't make the link before. But it was like seeing someone out of uniform, outside their workplace. It's the setting and the face and the clothes too. If you're not expecting it, well, you just don't recognize them without a prompt. I'll call Sierra, or should I call Hammond first? No, don't alert anyone. Why not? I shook my head. I still couldn't believe I hadn't seen it before. But I had. I'd pointed him out to Reva in the lift. My mind had been trying to make the connection, make me notice him, and I had fobbed it off. As far as everyone is concerned, it's case closed, and I want to keep it that way. Find out who he was. There is bound to be something in the article attached to that picture. Then we plan very carefully. Got it. I hung up. I could feel a sick feeling in my gut that said shit was about to get really fucking complicated. Well, guess I was going to have to see what this baby's top speed really was. I bent low over the tank, I gripped the throttle, and I practically flew. I slowed down when I reached the city limits. Well, I had to. There was the traffic for one, and protests. At first I thought it was against the big money corps or something to do with the fallout from the terror attacks, but then when I read the words on the placards, Words like independence for WA and empowerment alongside the name Ptolemine. That's a new one. I hadn't actually gone out much in the last few weeks. I hadn't had much time to touch grass or hear the word on the street. Like I'd said before, there was always a few hotheads who wanted Western Australia to become its own independent nation. But this was all new to me. As I stood, stopped at an intersection and trying to pass a wall of protesters, I tapped a guy on the shoulder. His green-tinted skin told me he was a half-orc without me even seeing his face. "Hey mate." He turned around. I pointed to the placard. "What's the deal?" He frowned at me like I'd been living under a rock. "We're being left behind, mate. She's gonna make it right." What? What are you talking about? "The rest of the country's turned its back on us, taking our resources, giving nothing back. We deserve better." There was a cheer from the people immediately around him. I made to question him further, but the crowd surged and he was carried along with it. I decided I wasn't going to get past here, so I turned about and made for the long way round. I hadn't heard of people being so excited by this kind of idea in decades. It must have been part of her campaign. I passed another protest, holding up traffic to the CBD, and ended up squeezing down an alley and over a footbridge. It didn't take me that much longer, to be fair, not on the Hellion, and when I did eventually reach my destination, I sat on my bike in the parking lot for a full 15 minutes, picking bugs out of my teeth and gathering my thoughts. There was too many questions flying around in my head at the moment, all vying for space and clouding my ability to solve any of them. Well, I was here now. Take on the closest issue first. I approached the repaired double front doors that I noticed had been somewhat upgraded. The side door was locked. I tossed up the idea of breaking in, but I didn't want to start off on the wrong foot. I opted to knock instead. A minute went by, and I knocked again before a voice came over the comm in the door. "Oof, is that you?" I couldn't help but smile. "Hey Jasper, can I come in?" A pause. No doubt he was checking with Shaky. He must be there as well. What's this about?" "Just chasing up a lead. Your boss might have some answers I'm looking for." Another break in the conversation, and then a heavy click as the magnetic locks released. I stepped back as the door swung outwards. The inside of the warehouse was pretty much the same as before, if not more empty. All the food and med supplies had been dispersed. Jasper stood by an empty crate on a pallet jack. Data pad in hand, he put it down as I closed the door behind me. I looked around. "Stock's a bit thin on the ground." He nodded and followed my gaze as I looked over at the remaining crates. "Yeah, well, most of it's been moved out to the shelters and such." "At a cost, I imagine." He shrugged and stretched out a yawn, his huge, shiny arms flexing over his head. "Not up to me, bro. I just hid things." I raised one eyebrow, bending down and picking up a label that had peeled off one of the crates and was laying on the floor. "I see you holding that pad more and more these days, mate. Got you going into admin or something?" I pretended not to have any care for the sheet of paper as I stuck it back on the box beside me, but the words, Site 43, were all too clear. He picked his pad back up and sighed. "A job's a job. I do the best I can." He started to scroll down and looked slightly perplexed. "What time is it?" he asked distractedly. Just after 9. 9. He went silent, and I decided to move on. "Is he here?" Jasper nodded, not looking up from the screen in his hands. He pointed over his shoulder with a stylus. "Down the back." I stopped when I drew level with him and looked down at the pad, then back to the door. "You waiting for someone?" He tucked the pad away and smiled lazily. "Meant to have a delivery today." "Ah, gotcha." I left it at that and made my way down towards the makeshift office. Again, not much had changed. I didn't knock this time. No one but Shaky was in there, and he knew I was coming anyway. He had brought in a couple of somewhat comfortable office chairs since my last visit. I pulled one over and sat myself down, not right in front of the desk, but off to one side, so I could see the camera feed on the screens. The goblin was dressed, for the first time I'd seen, not in a suit. He was still wearing a very nice black silk button-up top with gold buttons and trim, but the sleeves were rolled up, the collar was undone. He looked tired. "Please, sit down," I will, thanks. He leant back in his seat and ran a hand through his thin black hair.
To what do I owe this pleasure, boyo?
I just had an interesting little trip inland. Came back with a few questions.
Not much interesting inland. What were you chasing?
I picked up a pen and started to spin it idly in my fingers. They had a bit of a bandit problem at one of the stack encampments out there. I waited for a sign, a twitch, a tell. Nothing.
Happens from time to time.
I nodded. Bit unlucky for them, though. Wasn't just a quick hit and run. They were getting milked every week or two. Everything, in or out.
Well, I'm sure they appreciated your heroic efforts, but my contacts don't reach that far inland. So, how about we cut to the part where we talk business?
I tried for mock offense. That's not like you. You're usually keen for a bit of a natter.
It might have escaped your notice, but I have work to do. Got people to please.
I gave him a casual grin and looked down at the pen as I spun it in my fingers. His eyes followed mine. I could hear Jasper moving boxes down the front of the building. The pen spun around my index finger. I flicked it and it landed square in front of the goblin. Your delivery's not coming.
Delivery?
I tilted my head, giving him my best condescending look. Don't piss about, Shaky. I'm in no mood. In the space of 2 days, I've driven almost 1,400 Ks, fought off a squad of harlequins, put down a damn near genius hacker, had my limbs cooked and replaced. What I want more than anything to do right now is have a shower and have my girl wrap her legs around me. But I'll settle for some straight fucking answers. I didn't notice when it had started, but his fingers were drumming a rapid rhythm on the polished timber of the desk. He shifted in his plush seat, baring his teeth.
That's a lot of attitude when you still owe me a hefty chunk of scratch.
I believe I can clear that debt right now, if it helps. His hands stopped tapping, his eyes narrowed.
I believe you probably can.
I held his gaze, neither of us willing to back down. Now that I was here, I had all the time in the world. He had practice. You should have known that word of your little deal would get out. He shrugged.
Word always does. It's just a matter of when.
I let out a weary sigh. I didn't have to fake it. Okay. I know you still have a little bit of action on the side, but I thought we were past the more dirty shit. Why risk it?
A deal came up. I couldn't refuse.
I slammed my hands down on the desk, leaning in close. I let out a burst of anger I had been saving just for him. He actually flinched. A deal with the fucking Harlequins? Do you know how unhinged they are? People fucking died for those boxes, Shaky. Not corpo guards, not another gang, fucking farmers. Farmers and their families. Kids, shut up, just for fun. He matched my rage with indignation.
I didn't know. I didn't know it was those psychos. I was just a drop-off. I didn't fucking know.
He jumped to his feet, his chair spinning away behind him where it hit the wall.
It wasn't my job. I'm just playing go-between.
He was breathing heavy. He was sweating. He was nervous for the first time I had ever seen. My eyes narrowed to suspicious slits. Who's the third party?
I can't say.
I'll pay. He shook his head, backing off a step. I'll pay double what you usually ask. A dry laugh.
You can't afford this info. This is outside of your budget, even if you are cashed up now.
Who the hell is so big that you won't grass them up? I'm pretty sure it's one of the corps. Mason Baelish was framed to begin with. None of the underworld give a shit about that guy, so that leaves the rich and powerful. He looked up at me, a little bit too quickly, like a skittish cat.
I'll drop your entire debt if you let this go. I'll even pay you.
That pulled me up short. I'm sorry, what?
You heard me.
I knew money meant nothing to Shaky, not really. It was just a way of him to keep score and buy cigars. But that was out of left field. What do they have on you?
Listen, you took out the raiders, you traced it back to me, let's call it an end. I can even give you a fall guy if you need to hand someone over to the office. Just trust me. You don't want to take this further.
I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He had looked worn out when I had come in, but now he looked, well, there was no other way to say it, shaken.
I like you, boyo, and I'm giving you a chance to drop this and walk away.
I can't do that.
You'll regret it.
Is that a threat? He shook his head and pulled his seat back to the desk slowly.
No, it's just a fact.
I let him get reseated. I didn't sit back down. You know why they call me the Black Dog. He nodded. Then you know I can't be paid off or scared off. I took a couple of steps back and pulled myself up to my full height, squaring my shoulders. I know I can't beat it out of you.
I'd like to see you try, boyo.
I gave him a level look, but I didn't rise to it. I began to pace from side to side. He resumed his comfortable position at his desk and pulled a cigar from the intricate wooden box. I noticed that his hand shook as he reached in to draw it out. I rubbed my eyes with the heels of my palms, suddenly feeling the sleepless hours of the last 2 days all at once. I was turning over every detail, all the facts. Who had the reach to put the hard word on Shaky? Who had the tech to supply an AI-inhabited deck? Who had the intel to begin with? I'd been following the money, but it stopped with Shaky, so what else was there? How else would someone benefit from all this chaos? I said, thinking aloud. Shaky paused.
What do you mean?
All this chaos? What did I mean? My mind, in its exhausted state, had lumped what had happened at Site 43 with everything else that had been going on. Then, like the slow meathead I was, I saw the outline of the jigsaw assemble in front of me. I hadn't filled in all the pieces in the middle yet. The image was fuzzy, but it had a distinct shape. I turned my eyes back on the goblin. His cigar flared to life, and I prayed I was wrong. Sierra. The name just slipped out. It wasn't a question. Shaky didn't move, not even a blink, but the stillness was more of an answer than words would have been. She hired them to hit her own site. She could promise no intervention by blocking communications, then they would shift the goods onto you to be flogged to her charity and donated to the city, playing the victim and the hero all at once, and lining your pockets for the middleman work. A cloud of smoke masked his face as he replied.
It was cleaner if I took payment for suspect goods than if I was paid directly for my role.
But why didn't she just donate them directly? Again, no answer. It came to me in my own time. More chaos. The word eventually gets out. More sympathy for our cause.
They were to slowly bleed the site dry, then waste them all. No witnesses, and the reports would get buried. But word would get out.
It always does. And she would look like the victim again. More sympathy for her cause. I was horrified. I knew she was cold. You had to be to stay at the top. I knew she was ambitious. But this... all this is to guarantee her the win when she moved for governor? The photos that Fia had shown me, the pictures of her standing side by side with that psychopath. I wanted to vomit. I wanted to tear the walls down around us. I wanted to rip her apart and hear her choke to death on her own blood as revelation dawned. You have no idea the falsities that you have been fed. She deserves no less. I took a shuddering breath as that voice echoed in my mind. He was her creature. It was all part of her plan, wasn't it? I didn't need to clarify. He knew who I was talking about. I could see it in his eyes. Shaky took another deep draw on his cigar.
I don't know the details.
But you know enough. He nodded slowly.
Tear the city apart. Win the state seat. Put it all back together again in her image. That's the plan.
I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was psychotic. It was so unhinged. No one would think that this would work. Well, no one without money. This must have been in the works for months, or even years. A thought struck me. How long have you been working for her?
I resent that. Working for isn't...
I cut him off. Just answer the question.
On and off since the start of the year. She needed a contact in the underground.
I've been hearing how she hates on the color green, so where do you fit into a new order of things? Mob boss by order of the city? He gave a small shrug. I threw my head back and laughed at the ceiling. That was just gold. Fucking classic. Oh, you have got to be kidding me, Shaky. She's appointing you official head of the city's underground? That's such a contradiction in terms, I don't even know where to begin.
Even Sierra, delusional as she is, understands that organized crime will never disappear. Better the devil she knows.
And you're okay with all of this? The countless loss of life, the destruction of the city, all of it?
I don't have a fucking choice in the matter. I just take opportunities when they come up. Some of us have had to survive by hitching our wagon to the best bet at the time.
I felt the bile rise in my throat. I wanted to spit at him. It was a weak excuse. You could have come to me.
And you would do what, exactly?
I threw up my hands. I'm a hunter. You told me so yourself. I exist to take down people like her.
Sorry, boyo, but she's bigger than you. This is not a corrupt politician. This is elven nobility, flexing the power and influence they've built up over centuries. The ball's rolling now. Best get behind it.
I couldn't accept that. He had to know that. I turned and made to leave. I got as far as the door.
You don't think I can just let you walk out of here, do you?
His tone was low, menacing. He was trying, but it was flawed. I'd like to see you try and stop me. I didn't turn back. He didn't move. He didn't say anything. I suggest you pick a side, Shaky, because the ball is rolling now. You do well to get behind me. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't look back. I walked out of the warehouse unheeded. I didn't know if he would turn me in. That wasn't important right now. It didn't change anything. My job was clear. I just had a couple of calls to make first. Thank you for listening to Cyphers Edge. Subscribe so as not to miss future episodes. New episodes uploaded every second Saturday. Script and narration by JJ Brandis. Music was provided by Cale McLeish. Copyright JJ Brandis 2025.